But if you don't act, if you don't move forth, then what's the
Right.
point? Like, why are we actually in this chair? And I think sometimes people tend to get bogged down by real and perceived barriers, or perhaps maybe enjoy a little bit of the comfort level of their current position or situation that they don't feel perhaps as motivated. And I think one of the things in all my places, like, we've been able to achieve a lot in terms of just within individual schools across the system, or even like reaching out to the community. And that's just because we're moving and we're moving forward. It's not like we're doing this death by committee, death by research and everything else.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Together podcast. My name is Janet Courtney, and my special guest today is Dr. Nicolas Wade. Nicolas is the superintendent at Columbia Union School District, and that's in Columbia, California. Nick, it is great to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to talk.
I love your voice. You've got a great, deep voice. I'm a speech therapist, so.
You know what I would like to tell people when they comment, because sometimes like when they don't know me, it's quite jarring, right? When you just kind of hear it come. And I always like to tell people, imagine having this in middle school, 6 feet tall and barely weighing anything. So you can imagine my middle school career was amazing.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. So you sixth grade, you got your man voice in sixth grade.
That was where all the cracking in seventh and eighth, it was like, man, this is what it is. So
yeah. Well, it's a love. I like it. I like your voice. I definitely do. You have a voice for radio.
I know. That's what everyone said. I was like, NPR was going to be my fallback.
There you go. I love it. Okay, so tell us a little bit about you've got an interesting background. I'd love to hear about that. I'd love to hear about your district and what's going on there, and just some demographics. So I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, Columbia Union School District. We are considered a rural school district in the Sierra Nevada foothills, and it is right now. We are a single site K-8 school district. We have about 450 to 500 students, with about 67-68% are considered socioeconomically disadvantaged, and we have an IEP population that has kind of ballooned from 12 to 17% as well. Of all the districts I've actually been a superintendent of, this would be the least diverse. We're predominantly white, which is a far cry from what I've been used to in the past, but still very similar challenges to what previous districts have been, and luckily been able to kind of bring those experiences in to kind of help accelerate a few different endeavors here to kind of help out.
And being white doesn't make you affluent, that's for sure, right?
No, it doesn't, and I think that's something that for whatever reason seems to be lost, I would say, on the general public. I'm just going to kind of lump everyone in, but it's definitely I think we might be crossing over to 70% this year. So
Wow.
it's definitely growing.
Yeah. And that's a sad thing. We want all colors and all people to be happy, healthy, and productive. And it's certainly not me or you saying something that is meant to be prejudiced, because it's not. It's just the reality of where you are and what you're doing. So, it's a tough thing. It's a tough topic, and it's a topic that, I just don't want to go there. I don't want anybody getting mad at us, because that's not why we're here, right?
It's very easy for people to be mad at just having a general conversation about facts that are affecting all of us. And I think, my district here, we're part of something called the Community Engagement Initiative. That's kind of put on by the state, or primarily funded through the state. And it's really kind of promoting a community schools approach, right? And what's really great about all these different opportunities you have, now I think they got like 150 school districts involved, but from all walks of life. And what's really fascinating is talking to some of the people that are facilitating it. We really stand apart as not only being the smallest, most rural, but also homogenous. But yet, when you go there, everyone has very comparable stories, and I think what's been, I think what's really important in education is, like, we're talking about all these fun variables that are really affecting about how we operate, right, or what we provide, and they kind of made shift our philosophy or our direction in some way. But the reality is, it's facing schools like regardless of size or location, and I think that's been something that's really been, I think, kind of was causing perhaps a lot of confusion or conflict with a lot of people in terms of how they view schools, because for the longest time people were able to separate them out, right? Like, that's
Mm,
their school,
mhm.
that's an inner city problem or that's a rural
Right.
problem. But no, we all have them. There might be different,
Mhm.
like maybe some different variables of various intensifying factors, but yet we're all experiencing the same issues in terms of what we're trying to do to close achievement gaps, provide get access to basic needs or support to students. Like, we're all having the same conversations. And no matter where you go, that's the case. And I think it's really hard for people to accept that. I think educators and leaders have finally accepted that.
Right.
I think I would argue COVID actually really helped accelerate that conversation, but I think we're finally all realizing we can be different in the same room and really learn from one
Perfect.
another. And that, I don't think that's
Yeah.
always been the case.
And it's a beautiful thing because that's how change happens, right? When we recognize that we have some common factors, common ground, we're all struggling with the same kinds of things and we all want the same things. I always say, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, it doesn't matter where you're at in the political spectrum. We all want kids to be successful. And that's the main point. Education is about giving kids an opportunity to learn and to be better and to have an education. That's the whole point we're here, right?
Yeah, people tend to forget that, right? It's for the kids.
Right,
And,
right,
you know, and I think sometimes people do get lost into like, why are we actually in this? We're not in it for our health.
right.
I didn't do it so I could like lose hair a little bit more aggressively. It was, we did it to make sure that students were able to have access to something that may have been different from what we had in the past, or even still try and preserve it, depending, I guess, where you came from. But I think that's just always like the easiest thing, which is like, will this do kids right? And
Yeah,
if it's
right,
no, then don't do it. If it's yes
right.
or maybe, then I say go forth and experiment and try it out.
Yeah, 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 for sure. So tell me a little bit how about you and how you got to that seat that you're in right now.
Yeah, I've you know, I'm going on over 9 years serving as a school superintendent. So I was like the big joke because I don't know if this is a vision, you're gonna have video clips of this, but I'm 41 years old.
Mhm.
So the big
Mhm.
joke I like to have to everyone is that I'm actually statistically speaking considered the old guard, right? And I still have a good 25 years left. So God knows when I'll be called at that point. But but I started off actually in Chicagoland, and really what happened was really all of our friends and family kind of left Illinois. They all relocated for one reason. If they had families, they went west. And if they were about to retire, because Midwesterners don't have much of an imagination, they just go to Florida.
Yeah,
Um,
south
a-
of Florida.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was in Chicago for most of my life, and then we relocated, and we had a stint in South Carolina, and then we really wanted to be able to kind of like find a new change in like scenery and venue, and we always found ourselves like visiting California. We're spending weeks at a time every year, so and it was always West Coast was always a good destination, so we were able to kind of get here. And what really sold Columbia was, and I tell my board this all the time. I was connected to this from a search firm, and they were telling me that, this is a very good board. They're very much motivated to really, they need to fix a few things, the school district, but they really want to, entertain like change. And like, let's be honest, that's not something a lot of boards can say they want change, but whether or not they really mean it is something else altogether.
Right.
But one of the, and they were saying it's located in a very nice area. You're gonna love it. Plus, it'd be a good way to kind of get acclimated to California. And that is like checking all those boxes. And actually, my board sold it because, and I told them this when they hired me, is that they were pretty much the first board I think I met that they didn't really, I don't want to say lied, but they were very honest and they were very
Ah,
forthcoming. And I've had 32 board members in my time as a superintendent. So that's a
wow.
lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That's a lot of therapy. And it's and this but I think what's really kind of brought me here and looking at the options was that it was something that I could bring what my experiences and prior successes have been. It was a board that was very receptive and encouraging for change, but also allowing me to still pursue opportunities that would like kind of bring a spotlight to Columbia, but also allow myself to, benefit professionally and develop further. And they've just been absolutely fantastic where very rarely can a leader say that they have a board where they really want to do what's right by the staff, by the families. There's no hidden agendas. Like our meetings are
Nice.
really about how can we make things better, or just like really just kind of appreciating like what the students and staff are able to have access to. And I think that's really helped accelerate a lot of different endeavors here. Because I kind of like to say we're a small school with a big vision. And a
Mm,
lot of the programming supports that we actually offer to all of our students is something that places that considered in quote unquote affluent areas or that have more resources, like whether it's in the Valley or Sacramento, we offer it. And it's kind of cool that we were able to get to that point. And it's not like we're competing with something that's like 50 miles away. It just
right.
happens to be that we were able to kind of create a unique experience here for our, for our community and the surrounding area. And I think it's just something that is really just exciting, continues to be exciting.
Right. So what kinds of things have you been implementing since they hired you?
Um, so one of the, man, So I wanted to, yeah, because we've had a whole lot to kind of address because like
Well, pick the ones that you want. Pick the ones you
the
want to
things that
highlight.
I'm
There we
most
go.
proud of is like really being
Yeah,
able
there
to
you go.
kind of like I think the things I'm most proud of is that we're able to provide consistency or equity to all the students. Like so one of the things that we're able to do is that regardless of what acronym you may have attached to you or what grade level you're in, that you're able to have exposure to the four core. You're getting access to music, art, and physical education. We actually have a middle school course catalog that really is a tied to college and career pathways and has proper scope and sequence. Like we offer the opportunity for you to get exposed to and participate in high school level classes like in STEM, coding, world languages. We offer a lot of family counseling services to our students. We just opened up a community closet that's going to expand to hygiene products in a pantry. We did
Nice.
a whole
Yeah.
bunch of facility buildings and grounds improvements where we were able to really renovate some areas, make a true proper art room, new playgrounds, like really beautify the area, like and really expand because we're in a very open campus. It's gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous. I
Mm.
love sending pictures of it to former colleagues, just to kind of rub it in a little bit about, hey, look, like because it is just beautiful. Like, and everyone thinks I'm like actually doing something with the filter to make the sky that blue. I'm like, no, that's just
No, that's
Columbia.
California. This is
Yeah, it
beautiful.
is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And we've been able to we're doing a structured after school opportunity called Discovery, so that way students can actually we can kind of expose students a little bit more of their interests. So it's not just saying it's always strictly academically based. It can be it can be underwater basket weaving, but something that the kids can participate in. But we also provide transportation home, so that
Oh,
way it
nice.
kind of encourages the parents to sign them up. Uh,
Nice. Yeah.
but we're also dabbling in AI. Like we actually have quite, my staff are receiving a significant amount of training. I'm actively involved in a lot of that. And we do have a few tools that are really, really opening up a lot of different horizons for us. And we're
Yeah,
a
it's
leader in global ed. So we got lots of things going on that I think most would
yeah.
not stereotypically attribute to a rural K-8 site. And we're doing it all because we have an extraordinarily talented staff that I would say I've never had such an intrinsically motivated staff in my life. It's been wonderful. I know a lot of them like to say that they're appreciative that they have a principal and a superintendent who've been responsive. But at the same time, you can always be responsive, but still being able to kind of motivate people to kind of realize like, hey,
Mm.
now that we have this one thing happening, they actually are coming up with ways to kind of like either broaden it, polish it, or, whatever. It's kind of easy to say yes to great things, right?
Right.
Good ideas.
Right.
And the staff have really just been fantastic in being able to make a lot of this a reality. And it's always exciting that I can leave my office and there's always going to be a real positive suggestion. And I love that mindset with so many of them because it's not about what isn't working. It's more always like what is, or basically just easy being able to address something to be preventative. And like
Mm-hmm.
that's a fantastic place to be in as an organization, where
For
you're
sure.
not swimming in that or dipping your toe in negative. You're basically, it's so few and far between. It's just wonderful.
So, what would you attribute to that? Do you think some of it's your leadership style, or is it more just who's there? What do you
Yeah,
think?
right. It kind of depends who the joke I always have with my board whenever like they do ask me that same question, like, well, what do you attribute it to? And I just go, oh, leadership, just as the, you know, as like, yeah. But
Yeah, because you're the lead. It's me, right? Yeah, over here it's
yeah,
me. Yeah, I love that.
well,
That's funny. Yeah.
and I think, um, I mean, really, to be honest, I think, leaders always obviously have a role in that, right? I mean, because
Well, of course,
and
right.
one, so I think it's an easy way to kind of back up. I remember in a few different workshops I've said about, with some aspiring superintendents, I always like to have the conversation with them that you can have all this experience, you can have all this exposure, but you can have access to resources, right? But if you don't act, if you don't move forth, then what's the
Right.
point? Like, why are we
Mm-hmm.
actually in this chair? And I think sometimes people tend to get bogged down by real and perceived barriers, or perhaps maybe enjoy a little bit of the comfort level of their current position or situation, that they don't feel perhaps as motivated. And I think one of the things in all my places, like, we've been able to achieve a lot in terms of just within individual schools across the system, or even like reaching out to the community. And that's just because we're moving and we're
Mm-hmm.
moving forward. It's not like we're doing this death by committee, death by research and everything else. And I love when I hear people say, well, we need to like explore, we need to pilot and all that. I'm saying, I think we're kind of past that. I like getting these spirited debates with other leaders about it, because I really feel like that is lost time. And
Yeah.
frankly, we are now at a point, if we were in the 90s or early 2000s, I think that'd be a different situation, because you don't have the overt amount of access that we have to research or to reach out to other school sites. Like, I think our situation and climate is so different that you're able to find something, an opportunity, that you can really embed within your school or your district, that may have taken time elsewhere. But that ability to move forward, that will, I think, is really like the biggest piece. My staff here always tease me, especially my CBO, because I always can seem to come into her office, my chief business official. So
Okay.
I always like to pop in and say, hey, just in the back of your mind, or and she's always having all these post-it notes, because there's always about 20 plates that are spinning at a time.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I get
but
it.
it's
I
not
get it.
that, and it's one of those things, but it's important to kind of like leave doors open, and not be surprised by, by events as they kind of unfold in some way, that you're at least prepared to do so, or prepared to act. And,
Mm-hmm.
but I think being able to pursue it and willing to, but also not do it in silos, really also helps out. Like, I think reach a number of kids, make it
Yeah.
systemic.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a good idea of how to motivate people and get them moving, and that's really good. And they're responding, obviously, because you're being successful. That's great.
I was actually sharing this story because we were getting recognized by the Blue Zones Project for a lot of work that we've done for student and family wellness here. And I told them the story of how in my first district, there wasn't an initiative for 20 years. Honest to God, no initiative. So we did, just not to bore anyone, in general, it was like an ed tech. We were moving towards 1-to-1. This was about 10 years ago. And I remember there was a teacher who was very spirited, let's say.
Okay.
And I asked her, how did it go? Like, after the first day of implementation, everyone's getting their books. Everyone's like, like, we're trying to make sure the network doesn't crash and all that. And
Right.
her response was, it actually worked. And what I appreciate about that backhanded compliment was that it actually still built collateral, like, that people
Yeah.
believed that something that we were capable of something. And then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes, like, again, like, you're able to move forward to the next, next project, the next initiative, or whatever it is, and people have faith that you're, I think, sincere, genuine, that you're trying to actually accomplish it. And
Yeah.
and that matters. Like, just because you pursue a number of initiatives and don't accomplish anything, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no A for effort, I would say, for
Right.
the most
No,
part.
absolutely.
But I think that's kind of why, like, I'm not usually always a fan of, like, death by piloting. Because look at how many of those really don't move forward. And what happens if you're piloting half a dozen, you're a large enough district and you're piloting half a dozen things, um, in different schools, but then only one of them is going to move forward. So how do you feel about the other five schools? I think it's one of those
Yeah.
things that I think is, we're at a different point that we can be, targeted and informed and move forward on a little bit more aggressively than I think perhaps a previous generation of leaders may have been accustomed to, which would have been understandable in their circumstances.
One thing I often hear from school leaders is, I just want a partner who puts students first. At Lighthouse Therapy, that's exactly what we do. We don't have outside investors and we don't answer to shareholders. Instead, we answer to school leaders like you, those listening to this podcast. Whether you're wanting virtual, hybrid, or in-person therapy, our systems are designed to make your life easier and your team stronger. We are a therapy company run by therapists for the betterment of students. Visit lighthouse-therapy.com/brighter together to learn how we can help you support your students this year.
Yeah. Well, and I love the fact that you are relatively young. I have said many times, now I'm 58, so I'm almost old enough to be your mom. Almost. I had to
My
start
mom
at
would love to hear
17,
that.
but yeah, 17. But anyway, but it's like I love that because it's like I've said one of the things that, and I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, so please don't hear that I'm being disrespectful, because I'm 58. My generation doesn't move as quickly as your generation does. We've done things, and there's a lot of leaders in education that are in their 50s, a lot. And it's harder to get them to pivot sometimes than it is to get younger generations to pivot, because you've grown up with it. You understand and embrace technology better than we do. I mean, I'm like, my kids laugh at me because they always get the same phone as I get the same phone as they have, or they get the same phone as I have, just so that I can go, okay, can you fix it for me?
Yeah.
Because it does something weird and I don't know why it's doing that thing. And I mean, I'm not a total technophobe. I run a tech company, but my kids and my husband, we have a family business, and they love to tease me that I am the least technical of all of the people, and I am the CEO of this company. I have the big picture. I'm not the tech guy. Like, we have 3 tech guys. I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. I call them. I'm like, my son is one of our tech support people, and and my husband is our CTO. But I don't call my husband when I want something fixed, because you know what I'm saying? No. So I call my son and have him, because he's got 10,000 times more patient with me than my husband does, because we're married. We've been together for 31 years. But the fact that, our world is changing so fast, and AI and all of these things, and you're talking about access to it, and it's true. You have access to so much, but you have to be willing to respond to it. And that's what you're doing.
It's like,
cool.
Was a paralysis by analysis, like, where, and I speak often about essentially AI integration and learning and operations. And I always like going to being a techie, right? Like, I always like to preface to everyone, people consider me like almost like this, a resource in ed tech, because I'm just slightly more proficient with it than the average superintendent, And I go, but don't give me a list of 20 things and expect me to know all of it. It's like,
right.
I always love those people, but like, it's, but I mean, but it, even in the 9 years that I've been a superintendent, I mean, even, I know people like to say, well, pre and post COVID, it's like, well, it doesn't matter what time frame you want to go in. I go, it's just a fundamentally different job. There's a different expectation that's, like even now when people really look for a new superintendent, remember how like it used to be like you could read a description, like the posting, and you could tell they were going for like, oh, they need a fiscal person because they're going through whatever, or they need the healer, or
Right.
they need, or they want the instructional person. I That's kind of gone. Like they might have some preferences here or there, but now a superintendent really kind of has to be, I'd say, more or less a jack of all trades, but has the ability to be flexible, as these
Mm-hmm.
crises occur. And I think COVID, like when that happened, I know no one likes to talk about it, but what it really did do was it forced a lot of people out of their comfort zones into a new skill set that I think a lot of people took for granted or felt like they could just kind of gloss over it, which is the ability to relate to their constituents. It's the ability
Mm-hmm.
to like meaningfully engage and display levels of empathy and understanding. And I would
Yeah.
argue that you could see from superintendents who were successful and not, those who were just doing a copy and paste saying like, well, this is the Department of Health or the CDC, I don't know what to tell you, really probably didn't fare as well as those who were coming out there and being honest and saying, yeah, I agree, this is kind of whack. And I would ideally prefer to go in this direction. But, if we don't, trying to actually engage in those hard conversations. Because I remember being like almost like, again, therapist in chief, a lot of people just really wanted to know you heard them. And they would
Right.
and more often than not, they would say, I don't agree with your decision or any of this, but I really appreciate the time that you took to talk to me.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that goes a long way. And I think I think there's perhaps as maybe a greater openness to do that. And I kind of always encourage people that's like, you being able to build relationships can give you lots of cover when things become difficult or challenging, because we're all going to have something come out of left field, right? That's always going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. And people will always look at how you respond. And even if people are a little unsure, but at least people can know who you are and what your character is and go to bat for you. Like where they will know, like, well, Dr. Wade wouldn't have done this, or Dr. Wade will always, like, and that speaks volumes where, like, especially when you have nothing but keyboard warriors out there, they're not always keyboard warriors against you, they can be for you. And that's always
Yeah.
built on your ability to relate to them. Who cares if you have 10,000 kids? Sometimes being able to engage with parents when you can, even if it's for 5 minutes or a quick phone call, you have no idea what the dividends can be at a later date when especially needed. And I would say that's always been especially true. And
Yeah.
they always seem to show up when you least expect it or when you want it to happen, and it does. I think that's really just critically like important for leaders. Like you can be the best accountant in the world. You can memorize and apply every acronym that we have in the book, which, as you and I both know, there's hundreds of them.
There's a lot. Yeah.
You can quote research, and really in the end, none of that matters if people don't believe you as that person and what kind of leaves your lips.
Yeah, I think that's trust. I think you're talking about trust. They getting the people that are in your community to trust you to do what's best in your role, and for their students and for their children and for their jobs. There's so many different facets for your board. I mean, all of those things you have to navigate so many different avenues. But when you have that trust and empathy and respect, it makes such a big difference because people will rally behind you when they trust you and when they think that even if they don't, like you said, even if they don't 100% agree with you, they will rally behind you because they know that you're trying to do what's absolutely best for them. And it's true. It's true in so many sectors. And I think when leaders choose not to, and lead with an iron fist or my way or the highway, you're not going to get very far.
No, authenticity goes a long way. And I mean, I remember during COVID, and we were doing the whole transition back, and I was walking the halls. That was always apparently a new thing, was a superintendent going into schools unannounced and walking through the halls. And there was a teacher who clearly looked distraught. And I just kind of stopped decide, walked in the door and just, was walking through, just wanted to make sure everything was fine. And it started first with a couple of just random questions. And then next thing you know, I find myself sitting in the student desk across from their desk and was probably there for a good 20 minutes, taking up most of her playing time. And I just remember she just, not only she sent me a very considerate email about it, but that's the story that went around. That here's a superintendent, has barely been here 2 months, and yet was willing to, just sit and have an honest conversation about everything going on. And,
Right.
And again, those little things that matter and then reflect on you. And it's always like, I like to tell some superintendents, it's always about your brand. Like, who are you? What are you all about? Because, those core values, like, and that's really all that kind of carries with you. And, there's a big difference between, compromising those values just means you don't have any. And, making adjustments or excuses to them, for some other ulterior reason is not really you having conviction. You might have different challenging factors, you'll do what you can, but you still have to believe what you believe and how we behave as professionals, how you want your teachers and admin to be, or what you expect out of students, and what are you there to provide, to provide them. And, because we're the figureheads. It doesn't matter if you have the most dysfunctional board imaginable. Like, they get pressed too, but in the end, they're looking at you. Like, what's going on with you, and you are what travels. Like, board members come and go. No one really thinks about them on a regular basis or have the ability to pop up again in a similar capacity elsewhere. You do. And so in the end, it's going to be about who are you as a person and what have you done and what do people think about you during your time there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's absolutely so true. So true. So, where then, Nick, where do people go to learn more about what you guys are doing at Columbia Union School District and you?
Being a small school, I'm also like, the web developer. So you can always,
Oh, are you really?
always go on there. We try and obviously do all the different social media pieces, like whether it's from Columbia, like on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or our stuff. But, we are often asked to really go around and present and share about what we do. And that's always kind of an exciting experience, whether, it's at various conferences about how we kind of get community and school, community employees and school boards together talking about, again, strategic AI implementation, right? Being intentional and purposeful with it, not just saying, here's ChatGPT, go forth. But really really understanding what this means in terms of how it affects learning and how it can actually improve our own, daily workload, as well. And trying to understand what that new skill set is. And especially, with what we're doing for student supports with, again, like wellness projects that we're doing with Blue Zones, but also in terms of how we've been able to really offer a lot of special education and behavioral supports to our students. We have it all out there, and it's funny because you've asked that question, and I was at the National Council for Education Research and Technology fall leadership summit in Seattle, and we were talking about how one of the sessions about how over time, upon reflection, how has your role as a leader in general, like in the professional community, changed, in some way. And one of the things all of a sudden I realized, which was I've kind of evolved from that person who's just in the room chiming in or contributing to a conversation to now I'm becoming like the resource and coach. And everything that's happening is kind of a unique thing. And I think it got proven a little bit more when I was getting my coffee. And then a colleague goes, well, you want to talk to him. He's the AI guy. And then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, we were just asked to present at a couple different conferences about what we're, I'm starting to kind of dawn. And what's really kind of neat about that is, again, we're a K-8 district located in the Sierra Nevada foothills. And there are districts with 10 to 30,000 kids that are looking for ways to kind of break through on similar initiatives. And, even like how we have a full-time reading and math interventionist. I don't even think I mentioned that. And, and they're real interventionists. They're not just someone I'm trying to make full-time, and do something in the hallway. This is what they do. And they have caseloads, and we have set enrichment time every day for all students. And we work and we do something that is there to build up their skills to be successful in the classroom. And, and people are just always like, well, how do you do it? And I always love, like, when we do share what we've been able to do and incorporate all these different things, it always seems to be about the volume and the pace. And again, it kind of goes back to, but these are all things that we've identified as a need through, lots of discussion and collaboration. So none of these were foreign things that we were bringing up. They were reasonable solutions. But we also realized to do one well, it has to impact maybe perhaps another area, and that it just starts to stretch and expand. But that's just called, like, it's just called, it's called establishing systems, right? That's all it is. It's a system. It's not just a procedure. It's a true response towards what the needs are, and something that can be sustainable. But, like, I think there's plenty of things you can find us out there on, and we're always, my principal, Ms. Rebecca Wood, is absolutely stellar with restorative practices and conscious discipline, has really done a lot to help change that approach on, the adult response to child behavior, right? And she's been stellar and has been going around sharing that success story. But we've been very much, proud and trying to throw everything out there because we do want to be a resource for others, or have them realize that, anyone can do it. And everyone's story, again, may be slightly different, but yet there's all those through lines, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and that's the most beautiful thing about educators, is you guys are just leaders in education, just want to share their successes with others, because everybody wants the kids to be successful. And, it's one of the themes that I've seen that seems to just keep going throughout my shows over and over again. Like I was saying to you when we started, you're number 150 for me, which is so cool. So I've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of amazing people all over the United States, from California to Maine, Florida to Idaho, Washington, take your pick, and there's just been such an outpour of people that, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what's working. Here's what's successful. Here's how we're managing it. And if I can help you, I'd be happy to do so. Even if it's just email me and ask me a question of how we did such and such, or come and see, or whatever. And I love that, because that is America. That is who we are. As an educational body, we love our kids. And, we talked a little bit about the different aisles. It doesn't matter, because all of the leaders in education, we just want kids to get a great education. And we're willing, and you guys are willing to share what you've done with someone else who might need the answer to that question, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, we're educators. We love stealing from one another.
Absolutely. And it isn't stealing. No. You guys give it away. You really do. It's not even stealing.
I think people would be floored, because, kind of going that whole thing of how people view education. I think some people in all states, like, would be shocked to know that something that they like in their school probably came from a state they wouldn't guess. I'm not going to go and get specific about it but, like, I think people are very much oblivious to how much we do share. And I love what you were saying, because it is a very unique profession that I think it thrives on that ability to learn from one another, whether it worked or not. It doesn't, it's like, but you took something away from it, and hopefully one would be able to apply it to their unique situation, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I've asked that question before too. It's like, you did this amazing thing. What would you tell people not to do?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of my larger initiatives came from, like, I remember making the case to the board. I was like, don't do this. And a lot of it just really kind of comes down to training. Like, I remember, and, again, it's building up the capacity first before rolling something out. Like I think in education, a lot of us tend to, we just want to get the shiny thing out there and then we'll worry about it later. And it's like, sometimes there's nothing wrong with taking a few extra months to make sure you get it there and you've ironed out all the, wrinkles, whatever it may be. And, and that's always, I mean, just even with how AI is being done. So everyone here in my district, if you have a W-2, you're getting generative AI literacy training. And that was because hearing from superintendents from the 90s and 2000s who put off adopting, embracing the internet in schools, said they grossly regret it, that they didn't do it earlier. And I think that's just a thing that it's not going to go away. So that's like almost a driving force for us, just as an example.
Yeah, it's a great example. Well, I hate this, but we're out of time. We've been talking for 39 minutes already.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm a high school English teacher. We tend to do that.
That's okay. And I'm a speech therapist, so there you go. Yeah. So Wade, or Dr. Wade, sorry about that. Nicholas, Nick, whatever, all of those names.
Don't have a monocle.
I'll get them.
You're fine.
Yeah, take your pick. Thank you for your time, for your willingness, and just for your passion. And tell your mom that I could be your mother.
You'll appreciate that. Trust me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on Brighter Together, because, as I've said, and as we just discussed, we're brighter together. So
thank you for having me.